Deputy Donovan.
Thanks, Chairman. And can I first of all congratulate Ms O'Donnell and Ms Sherwell in her role, and again to compliment her predecessor. And can I just, I suppose at the outset, I'd like to see probably, Chairman, with your own guidance, a more full relationship, I think, between the chairs, especially the chair of the RSA and this committee, because I think it's beneficial that the chair comes before the committee on a regular basis and hears what's actually happening. And in that context, you know, while we talk of road fatalities in my own constituency, a man was killed crossing the road in the village of Hospital in County Limerick this morning. So obviously, you know, it brings home very clearly to all of us what it is that this is about. You just mentioned there at the outset enforcement, and obviously you put in great emphasis on that, and that's to be welcome. But there are other aspects, I suppose, that I would be put that away, that I'd be equally concerned about. It's in relation to engineering, because there's three elements associated with the maintenance of a safe road network. It's engineering, enforcement, and education. And I think the RSA have a very important role in terms of engineering as well. And I would ask maybe for your thoughts in relation to how you would envisage, or how you would plan on holding local authorities and the National Roads Authority in particular to account in relation to the engineering of some of our roads. Because if you look to see on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning where the latest road fatality has taken place, invariably they're not taking place in our motorway network, thankfully. Our motorway network is doing a relatively good job. They're happening to a large degree in isolated rural locations on roads that you know have been identified with local authority members and through engineering staff and everything else as being in need of attention. And through the good days of the Celtic Tiger and through the bad days that we have now, very little has been done on some of these roads. In fact, in some of them, nothing has been done. And I've cited the example here before of the situation in relation to speed limits, for instance, that local authority maintenance of speed limits. If you drive from Killarney to Kinmare over Moll's Gap, on what is a national secondary route, there's parts of the road barely wide enough to have a car on its own, and yet there's a speed limit of 100 kilometres per hour on it. And it just shows you, I suppose, the out-of-touch kind of context in which those roads are being maintained. Just in relation as well, something that you might comment on, there was reported in the media in Limerick last week, is in relation to the Go Safe vans and cases being thrown out of court in the district courts or the circuit court in Newcastle West, where it is proven, where solicitors claimed that individuals who were being brought before the courts didn't receive notices by registered post, so there was no proof that they had received notices. And the whole situation unravelling, I suppose, for want of a better word, that the Go Safe vans are on the side of the road, and then you have a situation where Go Safe vans the operators of it can't be brought before the courts to give evidence. And in the context of making the road safer, it's not sending out exactly the best signal that you have loopholes that you could drive a lorry through in relation to the implementation of speed detection on our road network when this sort of thing happens. One other issue, Chairman, that has been brought here before as well is in relation to the RSA's operation of the National Driving Licence Service. Now, at the outset of it, I was very vocally concerned about the implementation of it, and I think our concerns were well-founded and have been shown to be well-founded. And I cited the example that in the towns of Mullingar, Tullamore and Portlaoise, they're within 20-25 miles of each other. There are towns in the west of Ireland covering large counties where there are no outreach service for the National Driving Licence Service. And I cite my own county in Limerick, which is there's places over 40 miles away from the Parkway shopping centre where you operate the National Driving Licence Service, and where elderly people especially and people from rural far-flung areas have no access to the service and have no access to the service at the point of contact, and it is causing a lot of difficulties, and it's something that comes up routinely. And just one final thing. Again, another issue that will come onto the RSA's radar is in relation to those people who restore and maintain vintage engines and vintage vehicles and use them on our road network, and are being treated as almost like some sort of a pariah, for want of a better word, because there's a suggestion in some quarters that they should be bringing their vehicles up to a standard of 2014. And as I cited in this, not this room, but in this committee recently, that if the people that were looking for those kind of regulations to be imposed across the board, we would have former President De Valera's Rolls-Royce ZJ5000 probably dismantled, rear seat belts, headrests, new mirrors, tinted, every sort. It just strikes at how unrealistic some of our regulations are in relation to what are a part of our heritage. So, you might just respond to me on those few things. But again, I welcome the opportunity to have you here. I think it should be something that should be on an ongoing basis. I hope that we see you on a regular. And I would also like for you to challenge us back, that I don't think this should be a one-way street. And I think definitely in relation to road safety and the road carnage, I don't think anybody should be safe from criticism, government, local authorities, Gardaí or anybody. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Deputy. Well, I look forward to ongoing engagement with the members of the Transport Committee, of course, and I do think that deputies and senators have a great deal to offer to the RSA and to the overall project of road safety because of their local knowledge. On the engineering side, well, obviously, as you know, the major road networks, the NRA is responsible for those. The local authorities, there is ongoing engagement with the local authorities, but at the same time, the speed limits and the quality of roads at local authority level, that is a matter for the local authorities. So although we have some engagement and collaboration, as I understand it, I don't have authority over the state of the local roads. But of course, it is important.
Just the point I was making is that while you're challenging the Gardaí in relation to resources in China, I think that the RSA should have a naming and shaming role in relation to local authorities that are failing their duties, and we know some of them. You can get lost in some roads in this country, not for want of signs, but because of the size of the potholes. Deputy McEntee's county, for instance, would be one of the ones that would have had a serious problem in relation to it, my own as well. And I think your role should be to shame these local authorities into actually maintaining the roads. Yeah, well,
Deputy, I completely take that on board. Everything that has relevance to the road safety agenda, I will be involved in. But I think deputies and senators will have to understand that I'm only being nominated to take up the position. I haven't looked under the bonnet of the organisation yet, and I'm really reading myself into the brief. So forgive me if I'm not in a position to answer detailed questions such as this, the Go Safe vans, any queries that come up in this presentation. I will have a reply sent to the Deputy separately. As to the driving licence function, there were teething problems, and deputies and senators weren't shy, and local representatives weren't shy in bringing these to the attention, and it did take a while because there is a greater level of security attached to the issuing of the new card. But I'm informed, because I asked this question because of public concerns about the delays initially in setting up the service, that the driving licence card has now been turned over between 5 and 8 days. As to the point you make about the siting of the locations, I'll have to get back to you on that because I'm not familiar with that and the distance between the sites, particularly in Limerick, as you say. I'll have a reply sent to you on that, Deputy. On the vintage cars, it's not something I'd considered before, but I'm sure that the staff in the RSA will have a reply for me to send to you in due course. And I do agree with you, Deputy, that it is important that I would come back at regular intervals to the Transport Committee of the House to report on my own views and my own progress in taking on the role as Chair. Because, as I said earlier, constant advocacy, constant audit of how we're getting on, or any trends that need addressing, I'm happy to come back and be accountable on behalf of the organisation.
Okay. Sorry? Can I just ask one other question I meant to ask? Just in relation to following on from what Senator Brennan asked, can I just ask, what's your opinion in relation to the increase in the number of penalty points now for speed detection going from 2 to 3, and you're off the road still at 12? Because anecdotally people do say to us that there are locations in towns and villages across the country where speed detection is almost a revenue generator. The perception is that it's a revenue generator, and not to in any way condone the breaking of speed limits. But do you feel that it's proportionate that the scale of the penalty, 3 points for 54 kilometres per hour, do you feel that that's proportionate given the 12 you're off the road?
I do think it's proportionate, because I think it has been proven since the introduction of penalty points that it does act as a deterrent. People will be very careful not to exceed the speed limit. I am myself knowing that if I can get a penalty to 3 penalty points for an offence. So I do think that deterrence works, and I would support the increase to 3 and 5. Notwithstanding the inconvenience to people and the fear factor, but I think the fear factor actually has an influence on reducing speed.
Okay.